What is the difference between a paying job and volunteer work? You are much less likely to get bored to death at the latter. Back in school days, I would always turn my nose up at volunteering opportunities. I thought I had better things to do with my time, like sleeping, for example. Fast forward to the summer before I moved to Kaunas to study in a medical school, I was attending a festival of contemporary Baltic culture and alternative music called Mėnuo Juodaragis. Wandering around the festival grounds, I stopped by a bright green tent with two smiling people inside asking a seemingly simple question. How are you feeling today? It was a trap, of course, to attract new volunteers. I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, I wasn't drunk or anything, but for some reason, I left them my contact information so they could notify me when the nearest volunteer selection event would be taking place. You might be wondering at this point, what does that organization even do? Well, it's an emotional support helpline that pays extra attention to suicide prevention. Funny thing is, at that point in time, I was pretty much a human equivalent of a grumpy cat. Someone you wouldn't expect to receive any emotional support from. They did not find out about it soon enough, though, so I got all the way through to the volunteer training. For those of you that don't know, volunteer recruitment process can be different in every organization. At that point in time, every prospective volunteer at the youth line had to attend an introductory event, fill out an application form while there, then get invited to a group interview and, while at it, be selected to start the volunteer training. The volunteer training took approximately 4 months, and there were 3 main things they wanted volunteers to grasp there: active listening, suicide prevention response, and giving balanced feedback to each other. To successfully become a volunteer, one had to pass a mid-training performance evaluation and then a simulated call test at the end of the training. As you may have guessed, I wasn't doing all that great. I did pass the mid-training performance evaluation, but I struggled to be sufficiently attentive during simulated calls. Active listening is an acquired skill that many people find difficult to master, and grumpy cat attitude is essentially incompatible with it. In other words, this required a sort of a personality shift for me. Fortunately, motivation was placed over skill, and people that needed extra time could get some if requested. I've improved my skills some more and was eventually accepted to officially volunteer at the helpline. One of the first calls I answered was from a man that had his wife walk out at him during a heated argument. It was midwinter, he was all alone at home, sounded deeply disturbed, and told me he was holding a gun. First thing you have to do in a situation like that is to assess the suicide risk, and it's not that hard to tell that it was quite high in this case. Next thing is to ask to put away whatever they were considering using as far away from themselves as possible. Well, this guy did not want to part with his gun at all. Most he agreed to do was to put it on a table next to him. Well, that had to do, and I moved on to the emotional support part. I can't get into much detail here, but the thing was, his wife had a condition that made it dangerous to walk longer distances alone, but she left anyway and was later found frozen to death. He told me he still had to go to the morgue to confirm her identity. I struggled to calm him down. The guy was blaming himself for what happened and wanted to kill himself. It nearly felt as if there was nothing else I could say or do to help him when someone knocked on his door. He went silent for a moment. All I could hear were incoherent voices and noises, until he picked up the phone again and told me it was the police and he had to go with them. End of call. It all happened quite fast. I kept wondering whether I did everything I was supposed to do. What was going to happen to that man when he would find himself alone again? As time went by, I realized that regardless of your skill or experience, there is always a possibility of something unexpected happening, something you feel unprepared for. And most importantly, I've learned to let go. There is no way of knowing what happens after the call ends, whether the conversation has been of any benefit, and you just have to accept that. I was not too keen on answering the calls, though, but I had a knack for writing. Letters are another means of communication that this helpline uses, and we did have some practice with it during the volunteer training. However, writing calls for certain skills that have to be acquired elsewhere, like an excellent command of Lithuanian language, for example. And for that reason, replying to them was optional. I decided to switch from letters to calls from calls to letters entirely, and soon found myself very much involved with the latter. My contribution and enthusiasm did not go unnoticed, and I was offered to coordinate all volunteers that were doing this kind of work. I immediately accepted the offer and soon found myself in need of learning how to manage people, not only processes. Calling someone to tell them they are not doing a very great job and are avoiding their responsibilities, yeah, that's something we are not born knowing how to do in a way that leaves both the organization and the worker happy. And it might be even more difficult when dealing with volunteers because they are there by choice, not out of a necessity. I'm glad that my process management skills came in handy as well, as there was very little structure in how this form of help was organized. So I ended up being one of the leading forces behind a complete overhaul of the approach and procedures related to providing emotional support via letters that we used at the time, and consequently the most knowledgeable person on the topic. Moreover, I wasn't all that happy with the quality of our responses, and the only logical solution to that seemed to start training volunteers myself. Such being the case, I became a trainer too. It wasn't necessary to work with anyone in person at first, as nearly everything was done remotely. So when that changed and in-person group training sessions were added to the list of responsibilities, I was up for another challenge. At that point in time, I was anxious about being in the center of attention, and let alone the person in charge of a group. And that didn't help to keep trainees engaged and notice subtle details in their responses, like someone getting slightly defensive. I did work on all of that, though, and thus this grumpy cat went even further, from someone with little people management skills to a team coordinator and a trainer. The most recent major challenge was the combination of all the things I've learned during my 6 years at the helpline. The organization received a funding offer for releasing a new version of their book called Draugo laiškai, meaning letters from a friend in English. I had to build a team, coordinate the efforts, and as a teacher myself, make my personal contribution, and last but not least, meet the deadlines. In addition to that, every contributor was offered an opportunity to present the book in various forms of media, and I ended up talking on live TV. Could I have envisioned myself doing something like that and not failing miserably 6 years ago? Probably not. However, people at the Youth Line believed in me and gave me all of these opportunities to broaden and improve my skills. By seizing them and tackling the challenges that emerged along the way, I've learned to believe more in myself too. Such stance of encouragement and support is not unique to this particular volunteer organization. It's how most of them operate. And experiencing it can really change one's perspective from, I don't know how to do that, to I'll do it and I will improve my abilities where needed. I'm still volunteering at the Youth Line at this day. Starting off as this grumpy cat that found dealing with people tricky, I went on to providing emotional support by answering calls and replying to letters, coordinating a team of volunteers and trainers, and being a trainer myself. So it kind of went like full circle. Nowadays, I've also joined organizations related to my professional interests, like being a team member at the Junior Psychiatrists Association and heading a Psychiatry Club at the Student Scientific Society of the Lithuanian University of Health Sciences. By taking on different responsibilities, I've learned that there is something for everyone, as there is a wide variety of places and ways to volunteer. One simply has to consider what they want to get out of it and what they are willing to give. Volunteering is a win-win situation, as one can do something meaningful, help the community, and at the same time, improve themselves as an individual with the support of people around them. I would advise anyone doubting their abilities to give volunteering a go. Genuine efforts are valued, and your growth as a person will benefit your future. Who knows where it will take you? For once, I got to speak to you here today.